fix the music in after, but I know it's coming. So it's Gridiron 360. You got Bill and Dave on a rainy day. It's actually Sunday, the 22nd of March. And we are on the mics with a little more of what I call comment ball. This, I think we had about 3 others that we just dropped. So this will be 4.0. Comment ball 4.0. We'd like to thank all of our listeners, everyone that's subscribed to the channel. Please push it out there. Let people know. We're on Facebook. You see us on YouTube. We're on iTunes. Subscribe, make comments. Let's have some fun during quarantine. Today, we wanted to revisit some of the folks in the past 3 casts: the Comical Canadian, Sean Diamond, Havana SCP, Gary Marshall, Adam Letchin, Carol Wilcox. All of you, we greatly thank for the words, kind or indifferent. Your involvement activity is going to make this as good as we can get it, baby, and better, and better. So today, we are going to address a couple comments from a few of the listeners that was in regards to our free agency podcast in the AFC North and the Cincinnati Bengals. That's right. We are looking at you, Mr. Rob Vollat. Hopefully I said that right, my friend.
Or
Villat. And Mr. Jeff Manning. You guys made some, Rob made multiple comments. Jeff made a comment. Do you have those up? Do you want to read them?
I can do whatever you like.
All right. Why don't you pull those up for the Cincinnati cast and read what Rob had to say first and then what Jeff had to say. Again, guys, thank you greatly. And we also want to address it after you read it. So go ahead, Dave. What did Rob say for us?
Well, Rob had 5 different comments, so we'll kind of take them piece by piece.
Let's just go through one, and then we'll address it as you go through.
Yeah, this first comment, it looks, I think these kind of reordered, but I'm going to go with the first comment I see. Tyler Boyd, ranked as the #1 slot receiver according to PFF. I'm with you, okay? PFF, for those who don't know, is becoming kind of one of those sites that is known for the advanced stats, kind of looks at the position a little deeper. Got to pay for some of that stuff. So I don't know.
And one of your own is part, I believe, owner in the company in Mr. Chris Collinsworth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes,
If you've seen, he does the commercials, and it's really a great site. So, first of all, Rob, thank you for bringing it up. It's a great reference. We want to, we want to push out links and sites that are of great reference to our listeners. Pro Football Focus is one of them.
Yeah, these are kind of where, to give you an idea with advanced stats, it helps them, like, it starts to dissect and pull away from the game things like, for a quarterback, throwaways and those kind of things to help you really kind of understand, try to be more real in the stats. They can be a little bit skewed at times, like any stat can be.
Right.
There are times where it gets, you can't throw away everything in a game and truly understand what goes on. But good point. Tyler Boyd had a pretty good year for an offense that struggled. Let's be honest. It wasn't horrific, but it was definitely not a high end. Now understand this was an offense without AJ Green. He never played the whole year. He was supposed to come back, and then they kind of dragged it along. And then finally, I think once they knew they were out of it, they kind of decided to hold off. Offensively, this team, it's got a ways to go. And I want to read another comment that you made just because, or a couple comments because they reference the offense. So we'll stick on the offensive side. Another one you made was the big difference last year and this year is the offensive line has had a year to gel together and learn the new system as they switched from a zone blocking scheme to a gap blocking scheme and went from near the bottom to above average and pass blocking.
They went from zone to gap or gap?
No,
gap
from
to
zone to gap.
Oh, okay.
All right. And
you see, we're not beat writers, and we try to keep up with as much as we can. But that's a piece of knowledge that we really, quite frankly, we need some things like that, Rob. So thank you.
And so then also, and that was before Jonah Williams takes over at the left tackle spot, which is basically, your words, another top 10 first-round pick for this year would be that would be mentioned with the Mekhi Bectons. I think your reference is as far as his skill set, if I'm following that correctly. Another thing is Joe Burrow is the surest thing since Andrew Luck, and before that, Peyton Manning. He is definitely no Mariota, but I will give it to you that his ceiling is not tested, so we don't know how far he will go, but we know his floor is on par with the greats. Joe Burrow is the most accurate college passer ever, and it's not even close. All right, so let's dissect a few things.
And you said Cordy Glenn was released a couple of weeks ago. I think when we originally put this out, that had happened, or it just happened. The site we look at for depth chart is, what did I say, the Our Lads site? Yeah. And at the time, Glenn was still on it. He is not now, so you are correct. I did a little research. They did release Cordy Glenn. They were trying to find a trade partner for him, but I guess that didn't happen. And by cutting him, they will save $9.5 million against the cap. So, yes, Cordy Glenn is gone. And to your point, Jonah Williams, it looks like will slide into that position.
Yep. So let me hit a couple of points. Number one, I want to kind of touch on Joe Burrow. Okay, I love what I saw of him last year. There's no denying what he did. There's no denying that he completely elevated that LSU offense that they had. The most impressive thing I saw through him throughout last year was his ball placement.
Yep.
He certainly made all the throws.
Yep.
But he threw a bullet, and he threw bullets where they belong. So there is a lot to love about him.
Listen,
I don't know that I can go so far as to say he's an Andrew Luck and a Peyton Manning, because the one thing he doesn't have that those guys had is multiple years producing at this level.
Correct. And he had the one. He was, he's a guy that didn't see the field at Ohio State really.
Yep. I mean, I'm sure he walked away, but was kind of pushed out with Justin Fields coming over,
and then he goes to LSU in his first year. He was okay. It was, I think it's better than what they've seen in the past. Certainly, LSU is a place that they struggle. They have these great teams, but where they've always struggled is to find that quarterback.
Yep.
We'll see how he rolls under Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator for Cincinnati, because, you can't deny the fact that them bringing in Joe Brady to LSU from New Orleans didn't have something to do with his success, because I completely feel that, his talent was part of it, but that too was part of it. So, he's got to, switch the way he what he was doing in college, now in the NFL under a different scheme under Brian Callahan. I'm sure they'll adhere to some of the things that they saw he was successful at LSU. But to your point, and look, Clemson Tiger fan, as you know, I was at the national championship game. I thought we played a great game for about 2.5 quarters, maybe close to 3, and then it started to get away. And my buddy's like, "You didn't leave earlier." I left just about 2 minutes left to go. At that point, it was kind of sealed up for LSU to win, and he was in question of like, why? And I was like, because I like college football, and to see what that offense, to see what Joe Burrow, and in that game particularly to see what Jamar Chase were doing was just amazing and fun to watch. Also, to your point, guy, if you look at all, especially the teams that when it came down to the wire at the end of last year's college football season that were possibly in the running, I mean, the one, and I love my boy Trevor Lawrence of Clemson, but the one guy that was able to fit balls in tight windows, not just throw it up, like in tight windows that were covered consistently from the beginning of the year when they played Texas to the end of the year when they played us, was Joe Burrow. So I think he is as good as you can get this year, and I hope him all the success.
Yeah, I think you have to, when it comes to Joe Burrow, I think what you need to do is you need to understand one piece to this is, on a comparative level, the talent he walked into this year, and again, let's not discount the coaching too as well, which obviously is going to change for LSU coming in next year, compared to the rest of his league and his schedule is going to be different than the talent level, and not to say they're void of talent, but in a comparative sense against what he's going to walk into in Cincinnati and who they're going to have to play and what he's going to have to do. And as we all know, game speeds up very, very quickly. You also did mention, and I want to
hold on before you jump from that. We're not discounting the fact that he did play not just in the SEC, which is known as the best college conference in football, but the SEC West, the best division, the best college conference in football. And then the games they played outside of that, because their schedule ended up being so strong, was due to the fact they played some, again, Texas. They played some great competition. So if any team this year in college, or quarterback for that matter, had to face, some tough-ass competition, it was them. And I give them total credit. But even still, the NFL game is a completely different level.
Yep. Yeah, and I understand a lot of these guys that they played against, even though they were very good defenses, a vast majority of them will not be in the NFL. Again, but Joe Burrow was elite amongst them. So you should be very, very excited with the prospect of that guy coming in. I would be. I'm a Bears fan, and obviously we had number 2 and picked Trubisky. I wouldn't put him anywhere, at least coming out, anywhere near what Joe Burrow did. So I'd be excited. Now,
move on.
Here's one thing also that you mentioned, and I'm going to do some really, really high-level, thin kind of covering of the gap versus the zone blocking scheme. Traditionally, zone blocking schemes are thought of in a way that you're moving runners, and it really relies a little bit more on the vision of the running back. If you have a running back with very good vision, because your objective is to push people in certain directions. An outside zone blocking scheme is to push teams to the field side so they can, and then the running back's job is to find where that hole is opening up. When you're talking about going to a gap scheme requires a little less vision. The running back's objective is to stay close to where the play is designed to go to. Generally speaking, a gap blocking scheme is employed when you don't have the physical skills to overpower a defense. So the stronger the defensive line. So I don't want to say a weaker defensive line, because the idea is their assignment is to push and create the hole itself. So the running back is really supposed to have that one read. Now, it's possible that that hole closes and they have to make a cut decision, usually back. They're cutting against the blocking. But the idea is you're going to drive them. Now, one thing about zone versus gap is if there's a man in front of you, you're blocking them. So it's not really that significant. It really has more to do with assignment and the idea of how many reads the running back is supposed to be queuing up to. Now, Mixon did not have the best year last year, comparatively speaking, to what he did in his first year. There were games where he showed some effectiveness.
And there was injury.
Yeah, and so, I get what you're saying, and certainly offensive line, anybody will say it, continuity and gelling is important no matter what scheme you run. So that's a good point. I'm not so certain that they're as talented as I know you want to see. And will you take a step forward? The plan is hopefully, but also understand something. Part of gelling with an offensive line is being in sync with your quarterback. And so you've got a quarterback is an extension of that. I mean, they got to get used to his cadence. They got to get used to how he maneuvers the pocket. So there's going to be more gelling that has to happen there. My hope is for Burrow is, that he doesn't spend the first year getting hit a lot. And because, you see quarterbacks, even the best of them, get jittery and get nervous and start looking at their feet instead of downfield. You've got some weapons. I mean, your tight end is okay, and Azuma, you're obviously, it looks, my understanding is you're moving on from Eifert, even though he has not signed yet anywhere. I do have question marks about what AJ Green's going to look like when he comes back. I mean, he's not the youngest receiver in the NFL. He certainly has a lot of talent. If he comes back to before the injury, then you're right. You got a Tyler Boyd out there, and what's the other guy, Ross, that you have. So you do have some weapons outside. But like you said, the offense has to gel. Again, you've got more pieces than the offensive line. we said it in the cast, like their arrow's pointing up, but there's a reason why you picked number 1 in the draft.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of take that, with a little bit of a grain of salt, but you should be excited. I would be ecstatic with what I got going on, given what you looked at last year.
Yep. And to your point, look, I think one of the things in a run blocking scheme for an offense, a zone blocking type scheme, and this is personal opinion maybe, but I think it's very valid. I think you got to look at the back, okay? The certain way you run your run blocking schemes has, I think, a lot to do with the type of running back you have. And I'll be honest, a guy like Mixon, I would feel would be better suited because he's not as big, but he's quick, fast, in a zone blocking scheme. But it hasn't worked out so well.
Seems like a little bit more of a one-cut runner, which is, I can see
like
it.
if his zone blocking scheme is one that is kind of a space mover. They're moving out and then allowing the back to find the hole from that line, moving out in space and picking up guys and seeing where the hole is from there. That seems to me, in my mind, and me watching him at Oklahoma, the better fit for a guy like Mixon rather than just trying to bang it up the middle. It didn't work. And now they're going to something that I feel like isn't maybe his strong suit, but maybe it is. I could be wrong. Maybe it'll work better for him, but we don't know. So to maybe come out and just, think that changing your run block scheme is going to make the world a difference, I don't know. And a couple that with all the things you said, absolutely. There's got to be that gelling there. With the line and with the quarterback and the running back. So yet to be seen, but good point. What else do we want to talk about? Oh, well, you said something about Tyler Boyd. And look, I think he had a great year considering AJ was out. And the year prior, I think AJ was getting banged up a little bit, and Boyd struggled. Now he's obviously gaining more years of experience in the NFL, and the speed isn't too fast for him now.
Yeah.
But And we are in a world that is all about statistics nowadays. And again, take it as you will, but it is part of our game in the way that teams, look at picking up guys, releasing guys, moving forward with schemes on both sides of the ball. And, I think this year we'll have to see what sort of shape AJ's in and how that'll affect him. I will say that, I love the downfield burner, take the top off the defense in a John Ross, but he's done nothing since he's been drafted. With the not super effective running game and a new quarterback coming in, a rookie, and gosh knows what's going to happen with the line, if it's going to gel like, you seem to think it is. The arrow is pointing up. But pump the brakes. We need to see Cincinnati. Understand this, too. This is a little side note. Not that my wife follows the Giants because I am, but she's from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yep.
So is her brother. Big Bengals fan. I have a little place in my heart for the Bengals. Not a huge fan, but I have a little place in my heart for them. But I need to see a little bit more. And this is a division that has typically been very tough in years past. I think we have, and we'll mention the comment by Jeff Manning, but in recent years, the past year or so, and as I see this year, there's kind of one team at the top, and then everybody else is behind them, and that's Baltimore. But that's not to say that Baltimore can't be taken out. If there's a time, usually it was like at least two teams, Pittsburgh and Baltimore, controlling this division, with Cincinnati maybe making, poking at them a little bit, maybe making, giving themselves some opportunity. But this year, and I think the next, I still think it's kind of Baltimore and everyone else. And I say that to say is that there's an opportunity. You have an opportunity.
Yep.
Now they've expanded to 7 playoff teams.
Yep.
You have an opportunity here. A couple things that you guys did that I think we mentioned in free agency. You brought in my Clemson boy, Mackenzie Alexander, cornerback from the Minnesota Vikings. He's good. He was a shutdown corner at Clemson. I don't know that he's a shutdown quarter in the NFL by any means, but he's good enough.
Yep.
You also made mention of your middle with Geno Atkins and now new signing DJ Reader from the Houston Texans going to cause havoc on offensive centers in the NFL. I mean, I like it. I love DJ. And you've got, an older statesman and a guy that's not a rookie, but he's been doing some good things in the NFL, and he's young, so you kind of got that young and old in the middle. That could be fun to watch. Again, I'm a Clemson guy, so I love seeing my guys out there doing their thing. And I guess the big thing I have here is, you signed DJ, and I love him to death, to a 4-year, $53 million deal. Makes him, I think, what would we say, like the fourth highest paid D tackle in the NFL or something like that. Might be a little more money than deserved, but you also got to go by what was available and what the market
they
sets.
say it every year. Buyer beware in the free agency market. You seldom get anybody if you've picked up a guy in the first probably 2 days of free agency, maybe even expand it to third day. You seldom get a guy on the cheap.
Yep,
like you just don't. It doesn't mean it doesn't make your defense better. I did mention this. Like you can't deny the fact that your defense has been aging, particularly on the D line. You guys have stuck with the same core, specifically on the line for a while now. And they're expensive at where they're at. And I'm not saying there's going to be this giant decline, but this is a team, again, you're not competing, I don't think, next year. I just don't. I think 6-7 wins is a solid season for them with a rookie quarterback. You got to kind of look at, you look at an Arizona that picked number 1 with Kyler Murray, but you want to be competitive in your games. Arizona didn't, take the top off. They were in a very tough division, but they were competitive against some teams. And that can put you a year away. Again, like you said, offensive line is an example. Does your team gel more? Do you start getting longer-term pieces in place? Can you start to rotate out some of those higher-cost guys that I know you love because they've been on your team forever, but just, because they're aging, and get some youth in there? That's kind of going to be the big thing. I'm not trying to dampen your excitement in any way. I think you brought up some good points. I just look at it and go, I want to be realistic as to where they're at and what they're going to do. And that's going to be an interesting thing to see how this plays out.
Yep. And, just also touching back on the offensive line comments. Look, Jonah Williams, he's a Nick Saban protege. The guy, he played, I think, like all 3 seasons. I think he was I don't know if he was a starter, but he played consistently at Alabama. You got a good player there. Still young. He does a lot of good things in terms of run blocking. My biggest concern, again, potentially bringing in a young rookie running back or quarterback and keeping him upright. He does get bent back a bit on his pass rush or his pass blocking capabilities. So, he needs to, I guess maybe it's somewhere in the core that he needs to kind of beef up. But, he needs to be able to get more of a push at the line, especially on the pass blocking scheme, so he's not getting himself bent backwards. Now, he's great at, if something like that does happen, adjusting and repositioning himself. But I think that, we'll have to see how he pans out. You did mention Mekhi Becton. I'm guessing you're just trying to use a comparison to a new guy coming out. And, Becton was really good at Louisville. He did really well at the combine, and, you got to take that, in my mind, with a grain of salt. I'm always much more of a proponent of how did he do in his career in college, weighing more on what you believe he is than what you see at the combine. That's just kind of the icing on the cake, or what it should be. It's a little different in today's day and age. But, and I'm guessing, again, that you were just trying to compare him to Becton. I don't know if you're, what your statement said means that you kind of are looking that you could draft him. I think he's going to go much higher than number 33, number 1 in round 2. Obviously, you're taking your quarterback number 1 in round 1. You only have 1 pick. Maybe you can trade up to somewhere around 20 or the late teens with that number 1 second-round pick and try to grab Becton if he's not gone already. But I'm not sure if that's what you were saying. Looking to try to grab a guy like that or just comparing him.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they need to improve. And you and I, like, I'll give you an example. Like, you talk about Bobby Hart being on your team and signing him. Bill and I both have a lot of familiarity with him.
Yep.
One, he went to Florida State, so I watched him. Forced into playing time early as a young guy, showed a few flashes here and there, but when he got to the end of his career, never really developed. And I will say this, Florida State had an offensive line coach I was not a big fan of. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but then he went to your New York Giants.
He was kind of forced into duty right away there, and it just was less than spectacular. Good kid. He's not the one.
He's gonna need help. He's the kind of guy that needs help.
If the rest of the line was just like the Colts.
So the idea being, again, you've got to be able to have those guys. That probably makes a lot of sense to me, going to a gap blocking scheme for them, especially if they can't really manhandle the average D line. I think the challenge for you is, I believe, I'll say this, and talking about some of your competition, like with Baltimore, I believe you're going to see a regression in what you saw from Lamar Jackson. And let me explain that. I'm not going to tell you Lamar Jackson's going to be terrible. I'm not going to tell you he's not going to be dangerous. And I'm not going to tell you he's not going to win a bunch of games. But even looking at Mahomes in his MVP season, and he won the Super Bowl this year, his statistically, even pulling out the injury games, his average game, he was not putting up the Tecmo Bowl numbers he was putting up in his first year. So I think you'll see some of that. But what I did see was a Baltimore defense that was not as strong early in the year and really kind of found that, which, we're used to Baltimore being, is that defensive dominant team. They found that other gear and really excelled through the back half of the year. And I see that defense continuing to be very strong, and I think that makes Baltimore very, very dangerous. And then, you got Lamar Jackson's legs. So, you got a team like that. Let's just say this. I last year was not a believer in Cleveland. It seemed like they brought every clown to the circus, so to speak. They went and picked up every guy they could find. I was really concerned about how that would all mix together. Well, I was expecting an Odell Beckham implosion. He didn't. He certainly wasn't happy, but I don't think anybody would be happy with the way they were playing. But he was not it didn't seem like he was a drawback, but the team never kind of figured out how to get together. Now herein, you bring in a new coach. They've obviously added a bunch of weapons, so if they can figure out how to get all these guys to play together, that's a team that could be rising. So that's kind of where I say you've got some battles. I think Pittsburgh is vulnerable, but Big Ben's coming back, and whether you like him or don't like him, he can move an offense if he's healthy and he's playing, smart, which he has done a fair amount. So again, it's just really your scenario. It's gonna be a challenge, but again, with some of that regression, it's gonna offer you opportunities. It's very hard to be the number 1 pick in the draft, a top 3 quarterback pick, come in and start right away, though, and to, light the place on fire. If you look at guys like, I'll use examples in that same draft class with Trubisky of Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, you're talking about elite level talents, but they also went to teams that actually had some talent. You remember, like, they had an MVP on Kansas City the year before. Like, that offense was in place with Alex Smith.
And for Deshaun, Houston, the defense
was strong.
When he came in.
And he had Hopkins.
And the defense was strong. Defense can be, especially a rookie quarterback's best friend.
Yep. Now, so can A.J. Green come back, be healthy, and look like the A.J. Green we've seen, and come in there and be good for him? And then does that take some pressure off of Tyler Boyd to where he can be even more available in the passing game? And can that blocking scheme gel? Does that make him dangerous? Yes, but we're still talking about a rookie quarterback. I mean, Peyton Manning threw 25 interceptions in his first year in the NFL.
Yep.
Okay. On his way to a Hall of Fame career and 2 Super Bowls.
And one more thing I really want to, kind of volley back to you, Rob, and then we'll address Jeff's comments. I think we made mention in this cast about and if we didn't, I know we did about the Falcons. Same draft class, almost the same guy. Out of Alabama, Julio Jones. Out of Georgia comes A.J. Green. We said in that cast, unfortunately, the best situation, and the Bengals are by no means in a salary cap situation like the Falcons, but the best scenario for them was probably to
move on
from
Julio.
Julio.
Got a lot of value.
I mean, is that something you think that because of his age and coming off this injury and injuries, that might be something you want to do as a Bengal fan? Would you want to see your team move on from AJ, maybe get some value for that and rebuild for the future? I don't know. Let us know, Rob. Want to know. Let's address Jeff Manning's comment. Do you have it up? I have it up.
I have it. I can get it up. Yep.
Okay, I have it. I have it.
You have it. All right.
I have it right here. Jeff said, this is a good in reference to the Bengals. This is a good team that was banged up last year. They were in a lot of games they should have won. They play in a very good division. Agreed on all counts with that comment.
They played in a solid division. I don't know. I
division.
mean, certainly Baltimore was lights out, but Pittsburgh.
This is a division that is, I said it, they're typically
was
very
okay.
difficult. Now, though, present AFC North, I just said a second ago, if ever there was an opportunity, now's the opportunity, I think, in that division. And you also said they had a lot of guys banged up last year. Absolutely.
I don't think you get the number one pick in the draft without having that.
Absolutely.
I agree. The NFL is too much of a parity league.
But, Jeff, my friend, this is football. And this is the NFL. And people get hurt a lot. I mentioned the Atlanta Falcons of a few years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. Their entire offensive line stayed intact without injury the whole season all the way through.
Yep.
Amazing. Not something that is the norm, okay? It doesn't happen, all right? So my thing here is everybody goes through injuries. Maybe you had many more than norm or than most teams last year, but who's to say it doesn't happen again? So how do you adjust and move forward?
Yep.
If that does happen, okay, does that mean you're just going to throw your hands up and say, oh, well, we got the number one pick, but, we have so many injuries this year, we just got to try again. Sooner or later, you've got to figure out, and I hope the coaching staff is prepared. That's depth, my friend. You got to have the depth so that if you have that, you got a guy that can come in and it's next man up.
We talked about it in a couple of podcasts. The good teams bring the floor up. Let's take the Super Bowl champions as an example. This is a team that had nobody really of note in the running back game, but they felt injuries multiple times in the running back game last year between Damian Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Darren Williams. There was another guy Spencer Ware, wasn't he on there? And they rotated. They went with Mahomes. They were without Mahomes for 3 games, I think, 3 games last year. Tyreek Hill got hurt in the game against Jacksonville when Jalen Ramsey drove him into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the point is, do you have those guys to replace them? And Cincinnati didn't when some of those guys went down. And that's kind of the difference and where I think your team needs to. This is why it's a couple of years. Because you got to start hitting on the draft picks, get the good special teamers that all of a sudden can turn into starters when guys start rotating. That's probably the area where they felt the injuries so much because of the lack of depth in a lot of places. So I think that's what they're looking to try to build right now, while at the same time grabbing what looks like the potential to have an elite level quarterback. And that's a good thing. Again, we just spent almost 35 minutes talking about the Bengals. I assure you, I don't even know if people in Cincinnati are spending 35 minutes talking about the Bengals. We wouldn't do that if we didn't like, 1, your comments, but 2, we didn't like what we're seeing out of them. It might take a little bit of time.
Yeah, and look, the other thing you said, Jeff, is that they were in a lot of close games, and you're right. I think we even said it in that cast. I think it was the first game of the year. They went to Seattle, and they were putting it on a Seattle team that ended up being pretty darn good this year, as they usually are. But they, the Seahawks squeaked out with a 1-point win. And yes, there are a lot of games. I'm looking at the scores down the list here that you were very close in. The first meeting you guys had,
Seattle, right?
With the Ravens, you were, you lost by less than a touchdown. However, then you met them a month later and you got absolutely dominated. So, but to your point, yeah, you were in a lot of close games. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it's about W's.
Yep. You
It's
got to
about
get
the dub.
you got to close. Now, interesting thing is, right now, and this is something probably it'll be kind of interesting. All belief was Andy Dalton would be on his way out. Nothing's really happened. You have a couple of quarterback needy teams in New England. New England said they're not going to go that route. In fact, I just got it that they signed Hoyer. Brian Hoyer, that's his
Who
third
was released
stint.
by the Colts like a day ago or 2 days ago.
So I don't know if that's where they're going to go with it because he understands the offense. Because again, it's his third stint there. I know his last recent one was after playing for the Bears. He went back there and was
But
back
could
up.
they possibly, find a suitor and make a deal and trade him and maybe get something for it in the first round to get a guy like Mekhi Becton, or get something, some later picks and then maybe package those up with another team?
And there's a fair amount of left tackles out. It's going to kind of be how the draft goes and what the runs are on some of these positions, that maybe one of these guys falls to you early in the second round. Probably not a Mekhi Becton.
Andrew Thomas, maybe,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
think he's a guard from Georgia. But
You could be the tackle out of Alabama again right now. Projections. Yeah.
Jedrick Willis.
Yeah.
I think he may end up going first, but we'll see.
Yeah, so you got some guys out there, but let's see what you do.
Yeah.
Let's see what you
so
do.
we're going to wrap this comment ball 4.0 up on the Bengals and our man Rob and Jeff. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. And we're going to move on to our next comments, but keep them coming. Share, like, whatever, Facebook, YouTube, iTunes, and let people know about us. We appreciate it, gents. Have a great day.